Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer, food maker, or artisan selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants.
Today, we're enjoying Kat and Bridget and former co-host Justine Marzoni-Mead's conversation about all the ways farmers, vendors, and managers communicate. They're joined by Gina Johnson from Madison Farmers Market in Madison, Illinois, and Rebecca Boynton, director of 3 markets in Nashville, Tennessee, who share some innovative ways of keeping everyone in touch. This episode was recorded and originally broadcast in July of 2022. It's all still such valuable, relevant information that we thought it was worth an encore for longtime listeners and provides important information for our newer followers. It's a pleasure to share it with you again now.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Vendor 101. Preparing market farmers and vendors for success, and making market managers' jobs easier by streamlining the application process. Providing prospective participants with a way to predict profitability and tools to operate effectively before they ever pop their tents means easier onboarding and thriving markets. If you're someone just considering starting to sell at farmers markets, we can help. If you're a manager with a backlog of vendor inquiries, we can help. For more information or to register, click Vendor 101 on the homepage at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. This week, we are diving into different modes of communicating with your farmers and vendors. From email to social media groups to texting services, there are numerous ways that market operators can keep in touch with all their farmers and vendors. We can't promise that we know the secrets to getting your farmers to open your emails or even read them, but we do have some helpful tips.
I feel like oftentimes they open the email, don't read them, close them right back up. I've even had vendors tell me that.
Yeah. They're
Actually,
like, yeah, we got it.
I saw it. I didn't read it. What now?
Like, you'll open it. I'm like, why?
Right.
Why? Do they think
sometimes I think this about you two, though.
Yeah, we open
That
emails.
you open my emails.
And then we don't read them. Okay, guilty. Guilty
I do
about
read them. I just don't always act on them.
Yeah, I think
this
that's
is too much for me right now.
Also probably something that happens with farmers and vendors.
Justine's double traumatized by all of this.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so
It's okay.
sorry.
I generally mean to act. And then I get busy with something else, which I think is probably the case with farmers and
Yes,
vendors.
now you sound
Probably.
like the farmers and vendors.
Probably.
All right. So
You're just like method acting. You're
That's
just
right.
getting inside
Okay,
of their
that's
minds.
That's right. That's why I don't respond to your emails. I'm just trying to be empathetic with farmers and vendors.
We can tell them that we know exactly how they feel.
That's right.
I like this spin.
Justine feels like us.
We're going. So, there's a lot of types of messages you need to send to farmers and vendors.
Yeah.
I assure you, if you're a vendor and you're listening to this, we don't send emails just because we've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I swear. There are just things that we need you to know to make life better for you, to make the market better, to warn you of things that might cause you a problem. If we send you an email, it's not just for fun. And if you're a market manager listening, don't send your farmers and vendors emails just for fun, just because you feel like I'm supposed to do that this week. Just only communicate when you have something important to say.
Instructional in nature only.
Yeah, it kind of can become like the boy that cried wolf.
Yep.
If you just start to send random emails that don't seem to have a real point or really, really helpful information, you're really going to see your vendors and farmers not open or respond to your emails. You kind of have to be very, very selective. And at least in the case of our markets, we probably send less emails than we should just to make sure that when we do send an email, that it has that level of importance.
That's true. And actually, sometimes we send less information than we should in those emails because we'll look at it and go, that's too long. They're going to open that and glance at it, and then they're not going to read it because it's too much. So we will, distill that down into bullet points and knock out some things that we think we can expound on later.
I'm always drafting vendor advisories and then sending them to Kat, and she chops it in half. She's like, I deleted all this stuff. Like, you don't need to say this little chit chat part, just bullet points, real simple, real to the point. Because sometimes I try to over-explain things. But I feel like it's effective because we are dealing with really busy farmers and vendors. I know they're not intentionally not reading our emails. They're just busy. And so it's like getting that to the point. That's respecting their time.
Right.
And that's also communicating your information effectively. Because you want to find that kind of sweet spot where you're communicating, you're being clear with everything. It's not vague, but it's short enough where they can blast through it, get the information that they need, and then follow the instructions.
Yeah. Pretend like you're paying for the word.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
There you are.
Exactly
It's kind of
right.
like that.
So what are some of the types? So that being said, we try to really limit it, but there are specific kind of different categories of information that require direct email communication. So what are some of the types of emails that we send out?
So we'll send out emails, for instance, if a health or ag department rule changes, or if we've observed that enforcement of certain kinds of, a lot of our California rules, and I know this is true in many states, the rules are made maybe at the state legislator point, and then local authorities have the right to interpret and enforce. And even like at the health department, it may be made at the top of the health department, and then individual inspectors will have their own little, what they consider a red flag, or what their hot button is, or what they've noticed as a problem, so they're concentrating on. So we try and get people up to date on what's the focus currently, what do you need to be especially careful that you're complying with.
Okay.
Yeah. And just sometimes if the health department gives us a heads up that they're going to come, which they do once in a while, bless them, we can say, hey, we're doing do a self-inspection. It's time for a self-inspection for your health department checklist. Make sure, you have that free-flowing spigot on your hand washing station, things like that. So just those kind of things. We don't usually like to say, the health department's coming this Saturday, so make sure you're following all the rules just this Saturday.
Yeah.
We don't want them to get into a bad habit of that, but really hey, self-inspection time. If we do know that it's about time for that. So
just brush
those
up.
kind of things. Yeah. Information.
When we change our own rules, or, if we adjust a rule or a guideline, or if we notice that people seem to be kind of skating past something that's important, or we have a lot of people, say, arriving late or something in a certain block, or blocking the driveway when they're downloading or uploading, which makes our neighbors mad, we'll send sometimes an email just to that block and say, hey, just a reminder, you can't park here when you're downloading.
Oh, okay.
Or just a reminder, everybody's got to be in place by 9:00 because all moving vehicles have to be off the street by then. So those kind of things.
And that brings up a good point for market managers out there. Sometimes when you're communicating with your farmers and vendors, you might not be communicating with all of them, right?
Yeah.
If there's a new ag rule that really only impacts your certified farmers, maybe only those certified farmers get those. If some people are parking in a neighbor's parking area and it's frustrating them, maybe only send it to the vendors or farmers that are in that particular part of the market.
We try to make our audience as small as possible because, again, you don't want to keep sending things to people that are not relevant to them, because then when you do send something that's relevant, they say, oh, that's just another one of those chit-chatty newsletters that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah. They say, oh, that's not for me. That was for the other block. Well, they're just going to assume that every email you send is not for their particular block at the market or for their particular category at the market. So really making it specific definitely helps them open them when they come into their inbox.
Yeah. And then we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about temporarily moving a market for a special event. And we do that at least once a year at our big market, or if there's a special event in the area or it's a holiday or something like that, we always warn our farmers and vendors, hey, this is coming up. Make sure that you bring extra product.
Yeah.
If their location is changing for whatever reason, we inform them about that.
Yeah. Any of those kind of changes. We don't email our vendors when their booth is going to change 10 or 20 feet, even though I know
we
they
do
wish
once
we
in
did.
a while.
Well, depending on why, but if depending on why, but not often. But if we have say our Little Lily Market, they do a marine band concert once a year, and so they have to set up a big stage. So a little block of our vendors gets shuffled around. So we make sure to give them a heads up on that so that they know when they arrive in the morning. It makes it a lot easier for our staff in the morning if the vendors have a heads up and the staff is not responsible for giving them that information when they arrive. Big holiday weekends, we always try to send them an advisory saying, hey, reminder, it's 4th of July weekend or it's Memorial Day weekend, where the market's always extra swamped. People are coming out for the summer. Make sure you bring extra product, decorate your booth 4th of July, or if it's Halloween and we do hey, we're going to have a costume contest, dress up in your booth all day and we'll do a little raffle prize or something. So those kind of fun advisories that apply to everybody definitely go out.
Annual farmer and vendor parties.
Yeah.
We hope to get back to now.
Yay.
We're excited to get back to those. Yeah, we always do a party for our vendors, usually at a little, place that's close by the market. off-site. So after the market hours, have them together, give them some food, some beverages, kind of, get to know each other a little bit better. But obviously the last couple of years, we haven't had it.
That's good.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
That's always good.
Then something that's really important, I think, that we use email for is notices of violations. If a vendor, and this is really just going specifically to one particular vendor, if they're having, if they're violating like certificate issues or health department issues or market rules.
Breaking down early.
Yeah.
Dissing another vendor.
Just all the things that could happen with a vendor. You want to make sure that, yes, you can talk to them in person at the market when it's happening, of course, but following up with an email is so very important. And I think this is something that maybe new market managers or market managers that don't deal with a lot of these violations kind of sometimes don't realize. You want to get that in writing. You want to make it really clear. You can just say, hey, just wanted to follow up on our conversation that we had today at the market. I explained to you that you were in violation of, ABC. This is what we discussed is the solution to this and how you're going to fix this in the future. Just want to let you know this is our rules about violations. If you violate again, you're suspended, whatever's going on, make sure it's in very clear writing and sent to the owner of that business or farm.
And on that kind of an email, I typically close with, please reply to this email to acknowledge that you received it.
Absolutely.
So that you get, they can't say, oh, well, I never got that email.
Yeah.
Good point.
So, and if they don't, depending on the seriousness of the violation, I'll go back and say, hey, until I get a response, I can't book your reservation for this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that we have a record. We talked about that in another episode, actually, about vendors that are having a difficult time.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Difficult times.
So in addition to choosing like the right mode of communication, we're going to talk a little later in the episode to a couple other market operators that use different channels of communication in addition to email. But one of the, the important things to remember is you just want a record of everything that you're doing. Anytime that you communicate with a vendor, making sure it's on the books so your staff or other managers can look back on it and just for posterity, knowing that you have a record of that conversation. Because on site at the market, it's just insanity. It's too hard to remember specific conversations that you had. Also, a lot of times in my experience at the market, it's me, a staff person who's not the manager, but a staff person communicating to another staff person who's not the owner of the farmer's market business or who's not the actual farmer, but I'm talking to one of their staff people. And it would be very easy for a staff-to-staff conversation just get lost and then none of that info getting passed along to the higher up. So just making sure that everything is in an inbox somewhere.
And we really encourage our staff, and it doesn't work often, honestly. I'll be very honest with you. But I really try to get our staff to, whenever they have those kind of conversations, to email it to our core vendor email box. And so we have some vendors, farmers in particular, who are not good email people. And so we'll have conversations with them on site, or we'll get a text. We'll do a text exchange back and forth. And our ops manager is really good now about copying that text and, screenshotting it and then emailing it. So we have that continuing record. We're still kind of working on our staff, taking those conversations and memorializing them in emails. But that's important too.
Yeah. I just say, don't talk to me. Just email it. Just email it.
That's the best. Our staff is good about that. Yeah. If it gets into anything serious, they're pretty good about saying, hey, you need to email vendor at so that it gets to the managers.
Yeah. And that's helpful for your farmers and vendors too. I always explain like, hey, I'm going to email you to follow this up to make sure that we're both understanding this conversation correctly. Because like you're setting up your booth, there's shoppers. I got to go tell this guy to move his car off the street so I can close the street with the barricades. Like there's a lot of things happening. So I just want to make sure we have a shared memory so that later, if you do it again, I'm like, hey, I told you not to do that. And then maybe the farmer goes, oh, I didn't understand that's what you were telling me not to do.
Yeah.
So that it's just like not malicious intent. It's just confusion that happens on site at the market. So just getting it into an email that's really clear that both parties understand will save you a lot of trouble down the line.
Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of communicating with vendors and farmers, specifically more about like advisory stuff, like, hey, this event is coming up, or like, hey, remember that this is happening, or stuff like that. When are the best times to communicate with a vendor? I feel like that's something that we're always trying to like figure out, like how many days ahead of time or what time of day or...
It's so tricky.
It's so tricky.
So usually what I'm trying to do, we've got a really big Saturday market, and there's some other big Saturday and Sunday markets in our area. So that I know that farmers and bakers and anybody that's making something super perishable or harvesting is going to be really busy on Friday. They're not going to be paying attention to any of that stuff. And then by the time they get through a busy weekend, will they check emails from 4 days ago? Maybe not. So I usually try to send advisory type emails kind of midweek, like Tuesday or Wednesday. If you get too early, they're recovering from markets, they're not really watching email, and they get confused sometimes about what date we're talking about or what's coming up or what's happening. So I usually try to do like a Tuesday, Wednesday kind of email. If it's a notice of or a reminder of a conversation that we've had that's about maybe a conflict or a rule thing, I usually try to do that right after the market, just so it's still fresh in everybody's mind. Yeah. They don't have to think back on what was happening.
Yeah, I feel like that's helpful to do, kind of give them a few days heads up. And then if it's something that like, hey, we really need them to be aware of this, we might send them like another quick reminder on like early Friday morning, just before the Saturday market, just to kind of just pop that last thing in there. Because like you said, like the distance between a Tuesday and a Friday, sometimes for a busy market vendor or farmer, especially if they're doing multiple markets or they have a lot of like ramp up production, that can feel like a lot of days. Yeah. So kind of a quick like one bullet point kind of quick reminder, or like, hey, don't forget, like I sent this email, like re-forward it or something, just to kind of keep that information fresh.
And honestly, we have, like I say, you've got to know your audience and know. It's so funny nowadays with all the forms of communication in all parts of life, whether you're talking about your partner or your vendors and farmers. Certain people respond to certain kinds of communication best. So I have a little core group of people that I know really only look at texts. Yeah. And they won't do with anything else. And actually, I'm not a good phone person, but we have another manager that will phone the people that only respond well to phone. But oftentimes, what we're texting or phoning them is, check your email. Yeah. We've sent you an email because we need to have that recorded and documented.
That's smart.
But we know that you don't check email regularly. So I'm telling you right now, there's an email that you need to look at now.
Yeah, for sure. And then we also have people, we'll email them and then they'll call us to reply to the email on the phone.
My pet peeve.
Kat and I are not telephone call people. So
yeah,
it's been a struggle.
Yeah, I just got your email. Well, answer it. Don't call me.
But we also have like printed out basically everything that's on the email on like fluorescent pink paper and taken those flyers around, especially if it's something like a big event coming up or a rule change or something like that. And we just make sure that those get handed out. And when I give them to farmers and vendors, I say, hi, this is the information that I sent in an email to you or to your boss, because sometimes the information goes to the owner of the business or the farm. Yeah. And then they don't ever like translate that or forward that to the staff on site. And so that can get really tricky too. So you need to know, is the staff also informed on these things? And a good way to do that is just hand them a piece of paper, but also send that email. Because then that's recorded. Handing someone a piece of paper at the market is not recorded.
Well, and go in the other direction. A lot of times if you hand a piece of paper to a staff member in the booth, they don't necessarily tell the owner who's the person that's got to schedule that staff for that special event.
So don't always assume that they have a nice, fluid way to communicate that way. They're busy too. So just kind of covering all your bases. We found that an email is just really like the core, most important thing. And then, we have people asking if we're going to be open Christmas Eve already. So it's like there's some things that are kind of well in advance that you can send. But a lot of things, if you get too far in advance, they lose track. They forget.
They get confused.
Yeah, they get
this is the day the market's moving. Yeah. Closed or limited. It's like, no, that's 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. And if there are multiple markets and they're hearing from multiple market managers, that's, that can get confusing as well. So kind of just understanding where your audience is.
Yeah. Smart. I like that idea of reinforcing an email with a bright piece of paper that just reminds you, look in your email. Yeah. So any other tips about this is the tricky part, is it's easy to send out an email, but to get people to actually open and read. Any other tips that you found over the years of?
Well, our subject lines, if the email's important, is actually read this today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all caps,
emergency 911.
Yeah.
If we've been sending a lot of emails and we're not getting responses from a certain group of people that we know are bad about that, we have on occasion put things in the subject line like, to keep your reservation at the market this week, read this today.
Yeah. Oh. Because it's just, we want to be direct and really clear about what's going on. And that's kind of the way to do it. It's not
make sure they don't miss anything.
Threatening. They need to know that information needs to be recognized by them and we need to know that they know. So just putting this stuff in the subject line, that's always like super effective.
Yeah.
So.
And then when sending out vendor emails, do you use like a third party like email system like MailChimp, or do you send them directly from?
We send them directly to, we'll send it to our vendor email, and then we'll blind copy all the vendors that or farmers that need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we send it just as a direct email kind of thing. I do know people that use MailChimp for that. We use MailChimp for our customer emails. I know that there are some email systems that filter things that come from programs like MailChimp or Constant Contact. So we don't want to take a chance on that. So we've always just done that direct.
Yeah. What's good about MailChimp is that you can look on the back end and you can see who opened it.
That's true. That is.
So if they say, oh, I didn't get that, I can say, well, I looked on the back end and I saw that your email address opened it. And you can see if they clicked on things.
And there are some plugins for Gmail that you can download as well that will tell you.
Oh, to see?
Yeah, there used to be called one called Streak that I had. I will have to look up and see like the current ones, but you can see if somebody's opened your email and how many times they've opened it, which is interesting.
That's mildly creepy and helpful for us, but also creepy, and it doesn't make me want to open anybody's email. So it's good to know because you can get that recognition. What we've done in the past too is kind of forward our email newsletter that we send out to shoppers and send like a certain segment just to farmers and vendors, and I can put a little note at the top like, hey, farmers and vendors, like, this is what's going on this weekend. Bring extra stuff. It's 4th of July or whatever. Just like a quick note. And then also the email newsletter is attached there so they can see what else is going on at the market. And that's helpful too, because sometimes they don't get out of their booth or they don't realize that other vendors are doing other things. So that's helpful too. But that's just a little extra work when you have the time for that. Yep. I think that hasn't been something that I've come back to after COVID.
Yeah. All right. Well, like we said at the top of the show, like email is our preferred way of communicating with our vendors. There are lots of other ways to do it. And we kind of put out to our farmers market pros community on Facebook and just asked some people. The way that this came about is there was a really, really interesting thread on that Facebook group of people wondering how people communicate with their vendors and farmers, how to get them to read emails, how to get them to pay attention to advisories. And there's lots of really interesting comments on that thread. So I reached out to one of the market operators who was talking in that thread, and it was Corey from the Oswego Country Market in Oswego, Illinois. And their market uses an app called the Remind app, and it's I guess it was like originally used for like schools. Anyway, I'll read this quote and we could talk about it.
Okay.
The Oswego Country Market uses the free Remind app for text notifications for vendors. Our market is run by the Oswego Land Park District, so the agency has been using Remind for other program areas and events. It was originally designed for school use, so you set up your class under a main account and then provide your users with code to text to opt in. You can then send text messages through the app. We use it mostly for communications on the day of the event and in case of emergencies. You can set it up to be one-way communication, or you can allow vendors, staff, volunteers to text you back. We love that everyone gets the same message instantly right on their phone, and no one has to give out personal contact information. This has worked well for us for years.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, it seems really helpful.
So we use WhatsApp. We used to use just instant messaging, texting for our setup group. So all of our staff gets the same text. So you know that up on block 4, something's happening and everybody's aware of that. We can use it in an emergency. You know, there's somebody raising a ruckus on this block. Somebody call 911. Somebody else go observe, watch that situation, that kind of thing. And that's okay because it's our staff. So, you know, giving up your personal information is okay. But I love that you could do it like this and not have to give my personal phone number to every farmer and vendor that's then going to call me in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Like, I don't want so-and-so to have my phone number.
And actually, most of them do have mine. But I know that my other assistant managers and things don't necessarily want to give out their personal phone number to everybody at the market.
Yeah.
This sounds brilliant to me.
Yeah. And it also seems really awesome in that you can text to opt in with a code. Like, I'm imagining we have a lot of vendors that have like, there's almost a different face in their booth every single week. Like, they obviously have a big staff that they rotate through the markets. So they could just have whoever is on site that day, like, opt in and just be part of this text message thread where, you know, they don't have to have each one of their staff members have their email in this big email list.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you're in an area where like the weather is really can change moment to moment, that could be a really great thing. Like, hey, make sure you have your tent weights today. And then later it's like, okay, everyone get the heck out of here. We have to evacuate or something like that. It could.
I mean, and in today's climate, sad but true, this sounds like it could be a really good system in case of an emergency, in case there's, something horrible happening.
Yeah.
Gas leak. There's a big gas leak at the Pike Place Market years ago,
no.
and they had to clear everybody quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So for an emergency situation, that could be...
Because an email is not going to work for that.
That's right.
No. Open right now.
Right. Bullhorns, that's kind of what we're about, and whistles and things, but text would be great.
Yeah, definitely for emergency plans. That sounds like a great way to do that. And then just having people opt in and being able to just remove them if they leave the market. That's a great way to keep communication up. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Alrighty, so now we're going to transition and talk to a couple other farmers market managers that utilize social media to communicate with their vendors.
Yeah. Let's check in with Gina Johnson, who's the manager and the team at the Madison Farmers Market in Madison, Indiana. Gina uses a private vendor-only Facebook group as her primary means of communicating because it can track the conversations and questions, much like we've been talking about email being able to do. But obviously also it's interactive between her and her farmers and vendors, which is not exactly like email does, especially when you're doing a group email. Gina, welcome to Tent Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So how many vendors do you have in your market that you're including in this Facebook group?
So currently for this season, we have 28 total vendors. And for our space, it's actually pretty good. That's an increase. We had 21 total last summer, which was my first summer with our market. We are just within one city block. And so based on the constraints of our space, it's actually a pretty good number. We've got a couple spaces open if we have any more seasoned vendors, but 28 is where we're at right now. But that also includes some partnerships. So within our Facebook group, we probably have maybe 35 total people because we're including anyone who's within an approved seasoned vendor would be in that Facebook group.
Okay. So anybody that's ever at your market, whether, they're just in or out. Is yours a year-round market or are you seasonal?
Yes, we are a year-round market. So the only vendors that aren't participating in our Facebook group are vendors who are daily or, if they're just dropping in once or twice in the season, they're there for maybe a holiday type market or something like that. They're not included in that group, but a seasoned vendor, so someone who's really putting in the time and effort to be a part of our market, those are the vendors that are included in that group.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Totally makes sense. How long have you been using a Facebook group to communicate with your vendors?
So we as a market, I believe, have been using it for at least the last 8 years. That's the oldest I can find.
Wow. Way ahead of the trend on that.
Our market has had some changes in management over the past few years. And as of April of 2021, the vendors approached our Main Street program. So we're under the Madison Main Street program. And the vendors approached the Main Street program to ask for a little bit of help with organization and structure. And then I was hired May of last year. So I've only been in the group since May of last year, but I can find that there have been vendors who've been in there for at least 8 years.
Wow.
Interesting.
That is so awesome that you have. We were just talking about living documents the other day and how if one of us got hit by a bus, then, it would be hard to transfer all of that stuff in that person's brain into, a document. So that's so awesome that you have all of that information going 8 years back.
Yeah, I only laugh about the getting hit by a bus because a friend of mine just mentioned, she was like, you have to have if Gina gets hit by a bus plan. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's awful to think about, but very much true. Because I don't know, being a sole staff member, we have volunteers that help, but I really do have to have kind of tracking for that. And that is very helpful with the Facebook group is that we can look back and see conversations and see events and see things that worked, things that didn't. So it's very helpful to have that kind of tracking.
We need to come up with a different word, a different phrase for that because we use
less
that
violent
phrase. Yeah, what if you get hit by a bus? But we should call it, what if Kat decides to run off and live in Paris?
Yeah.
We track you down.
Yeah.
Super in support of Gina needs a mental health day.
Right.
So guess what are we going to do without her? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should call it that instead.
But if you're not in a coma, we can call you. So I feel like it's like loses the urgency. So it kind of has to be.
Yeah, we'll find you.
Gina's phone takes a swim.
Yeah,
there you go. You get
And
beamed
she
up.
needs a mental health day.
Right, get beamed. She's scuba diving. What happens with Gina's scuba?
How do you manage this group in terms of if somebody leaves or if somebody is no longer at your market Do you do like a yearly audit of like removing people, or do people kind of remove themselves? How do you like keep this group really just the vendors that are there regularly?
Yeah, it would probably be a lot easier on myself if I just set a date and I said once every 6 months, I'm going to check. I just kind of, when I log in, I'll look through it. If I can remember that there's a vendor that's been in there that I haven't seen active for a while, we do, I hate saying we clean it out, but we do clean it out because we talk about things in that group that are things that are important for vendors, for active vendors in our market. And it's not necessarily things that need to be shared with the general community. What has been done prior to my hiring is that if you were not, so I said we're a year-round market, but we have a summer season and a winter season. And so previously what had happened is if you weren't a vendor in the winter market, you kind of got kicked out for a season. Now, when I was getting ready to go into our winter market season, I knew that I had a handful of vendors who would be returning in the summer, or I had high hopes that they would. And in my mind, I thought it's just a waste of my time to kick them out to then try and get them back in. When over the winter market, I'm talking about our application has now opened. And if we're doing our farm and vendor visits and different things like that, that I want those returning vendors to be aware of. So I've taken the approach of, if I know you're returning, I keep you in. If something happens that you're not returning or you're just not interested anymore, whatever happens, you move, then I start cleaning that out. And it's just like I said, we talk about things that it's not like it's secretive by any means, but we talk about things, we share our minutes from our farmers market committee meetings. Those aren't things that necessarily the general public needs or probably even wants to hear about. You know, the things we talk about of like what's coming up with market, the general public doesn't need to hear about it until we flesh it all out, you know? So yeah, that's kind of that's the approach I've taken, is to just keep in vendors who I know are going to keep coming back and keep them a part of the conversation. Because I think that's important. I think that's one of the benefits to the Facebook group, is that there's a better ability to communicate back and forth versus, like you said, email.
Yeah. Do you require your vendors to be in the group, or is it something that it's like, you obviously want them there, but they can get the same information elsewhere? Or is it like you have to be in the group? This is part of the rules of participating as a vendor.
A little bit of everything. So we have written it into our handbook this year that vendors understand that when they join our market, that you are expected to be in this vendor only group, because that is where a lot of our communication happens. I do use email occasionally, but it's not in the same way that I use the Facebook group. The Facebook group I'm using on a weekly basis. I post a list of the vendors who are confirmed for the upcoming week. I let them know if we're going to have a market musician, if we have any other partnerships or events going on that week, so that they can let their customers know and try and spread that information. So a little bit of everything. I mean, if we're a rain or shine market, so we don't close often, but if we have severe weather, we're in southern Indiana, we get really bad snowstorms and ice storms, and we get tornadoes. So if we have a last minute cancellation, something like that, kind of emergency, I send out an email just to make sure everyone has the information. But those kind of like weekly check-ins, updates, things like that all goes on in the Facebook group. So it's written into the handbook. I kind of ask my vendors, I understand if you don't want to have a personal Facebook page. I understand that for some people, it's just not something they're interested in. But in terms of a business, it's free marketing to use social media. So I really try and encourage them all, because they all say they want to grow their business. So if they just have a business page and they can join our vendor page with that business page, they can still get those updates and not have to worry about the friend requests or things like that. And then it helps them grow their business too, because I'm always telling them, just post one picture. Say, hey, I'm at market today. Post one picture out in the garden. I'm picking this today. Little things like that just help grow their following as well. So I think it's a win-win if they do it. I haven't had anyone like outright refuse yet, but
Yeah, that was going to be one of our questions. Have you had anybody just say, no, I don't do Facebook?
I have, I'm trying to think. I've got one right now who he just doesn't really like to do Facebook, but I wouldn't say that he's outright refused.
Gotcha.
some people have their spouse join. I'm okay with that. It's a partnership. So, if your spouse is the one who does social media, great. Can they just pass along the info? That's all I need.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. Are there any like downsides? Like, do you ever get anybody rowdy in the group that you have to tell to settle down, or somebody just a little bit too chatty that you have to say like, hey, we're using this for information, not just like going off about random stuff? Like, how much time do you have to spend moderating it?
Since I've been running it, I have not had those issues, though I'm certain that they have happened before, because when you just get a group of people together, that's going to happen from time to time. I really don't do much moderating. Probably my biggest time spent moderating is just fielding the requests to join that come from people who are in Madison, Alabama, or Madison, New Jersey, or Madison, Wisconsin, or Madison, other than that, I really don't have to do much moderating. I think the downside, which is funny that you've already kind of talked about email and establishing better back and forth communication, is I wish my vendors would talk a little bit more. So I'm curious if they'll hear this and they'll be like, all right, Gina, you told me to talk. I think it allows for more discussion, and it could allow for more discussion. I have seen some this year where vendors will post, hey, I'm looking for a commercial kitchen space. I want to move in and do a product in a commercial space. And so they'll have some discussions about things like that. I wish they'd talk a little bit more. They've all said they want to work on growing their businesses. And to some of them, that means they want to retire doing this. They want to make this their full time. And other vendors just want to see what kind of growth they can get. And I think that they could use this Facebook group as a way to bounce ideas off of one another and learn from one another. So I sometimes wish there was more discussion, but yeah, maybe then I would have more moderating to do.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a really good opportunity for vendors to encourage each other, which a lot of times they're willing to do, but they don't have time at the market.
Yeah.
So not at all. And that's the thing. I mean, so our summer market is 4 hours. Our winter market is 2 hours. And it's still, I like that we're switched into our summer market season, because I don't feel so much like I blink and market closes. Which was winter market, and it was kind of hectic. But summer, it's busy. Right now, we're a producer-only market. And so we've come into kind of the end of our strawberry season here. We're coming into more produce that's coming in, and it's just busy from open to close. And so how do you get your vendors to talk to one another? Email doesn't really allow that very well. But the Facebook group could, and I hope it continues to grow in that sense, because they can be such great resources for one another.
Absolutely. I have had a manager tell, and I can't remember if it was in our group or just somebody that I had to chat with at the conference, but say, I don't want my vendors to talk to each other. What if they, get together and form a union or
conspire against us.
Plan a coup and overthrow me?
Oh boy.
My guess is they're going to talk to each other whether or not you give them a platform.
Yeah.
So
that's a weird insecurity to have.
That is. And honestly, if you have that, maybe work with your, vendors on building that relationship of trust. I feel very lucky that I'm not too worried about that. I've actually had, like I said, our market has had a lot of turnover in management. And going into my first winter season last year, I had vendor after vendor coming up, Gina, are you staying? We haven't had a manager stay for another 6 months and so long. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. And then it came up to summer market and they're like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. So I don't think they'll stage a coup against me, but
well, I'm excited to hear you're working for Main Street. We actually just came back. We were earlier in the very start of spring.
It was like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
From this recording.
We were at a conference for Main Street America. So
our Main Street group was there, and they came back and I said, did you go talk to the Farmers Market Pros? They're like, who? I'm like,
they missed us.
I didn't know you guys were going to be there. And I was like, I guess I assumed that they would have just known. And I was like, you could have met Kat.
Yeah, it would have been fun.
We had a booth.
Justine and Bridget. Yeah, it was awesome. So not getting together to stage a coup against you, thank goodness, but have you had anybody go negative in any other ways in that group? So I guess you came in, luckily, a little bit after peak crazy season, but have you had, fights about wearing masks in there or is one vendor trash talking another or any kind of thing where you've had to block somebody or ask them to settle down?
No, not that I can recall. Yeah, I definitely came in after the peak of the mask situation. Our market actually was very supportive of our vendors as a whole were very supportive of masking and social distancing to protect our community, especially because during that time, farmers markets were essential. I love that hashtag and I use it so much because especially during that time, and I think now too. So no, our vendors were very supportive of that. I don't recall seeing any of that, especially not since I've been hired. I think we're just very lucky. Yeah, I don't know. I think we've got a good group. I don't want to jinx it, but I really think we've got a great group of vendors here. So
that's great.
That's awesome. It sounds like a rare Facebook happy moment.
Yeah, I like it.
And I think this whole episode is just about finding what works best for the community that you're working with. Like, what is your vendor group like? What do you like to do as a market operator, and finding what works and just going with that and not just replicating what someone else does because it works for them. But it sounds like this is a great tool for your vendors and for you.
Yep.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't work for everyone. But one of the things that I like to do as far as like management style is I use this phrase, adopt, then adapt. And so when I took this position with the market, my first thing was not to come in and try and make a bunch of changes. I wanted to see what were they doing and then figure out, does it really work, especially as we're now under a Main Street program, or do we need to make some changes? But I didn't feel need to make any waves, especially with this group. It's worked well, but I realized that it couldn't work for everyone. So I think it's just an opportunity. Just try it out. I think it's worth a try.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Awesome.
I love any kind of system that provides a chance for people to be heard. They like that and to listen to your group. It's been really a pleasure talking to you. We're going to move on and talk to somebody that's doing Instagram groups, which is a whole kind of different operation. Good talking to you today, Gina, and we'll talk to you again probably about other topics in the future. You've been a pleasure.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gina. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, now we're going to speak with Rebecca Boynton, Director of 3 Farmers Markets in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to Tent Talk, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, good. We're excited to have you. We're excited that you're excited. So you use an Instagram group to communicate with your farmers and vendors from your markets, right? So you manage 3 markets. Are those 3 different Instagram groups?
Actually, it would be more than that because an Instagram chat group only allows up to 30 participants, 30 different accounts. So each of my different Instagram handles for each different market, I have different groups underneath each handle. So I have a general one where I have, my most, let's say, participatory vendors who are always on their Instagram, first at the market, and then I'll have smaller groups like just my veggie farmers or just my dairy farmers.
Interesting.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. So for the way that you do, like on the back end, your inbox, it's from each of the different Instagram handles of the markets that you run. So like the Richland Park Farmers Market has its own Instagram and you have groups under that one. And then the East Nashville one has its own. And then the Wedgwood Houston one has its own.
Correct. Well, the Wedgwood Houston one has not launched yet.
Oh,
but the East Nashville Farmers Market, the Richland Park Farmers Market, correct. They're 2 different accounts, 2 different Instagram accounts. And in the back end, in the messages, I've created one large main Instagram chat room for each handle. Okay. But then sometimes, because it only allows you to add 30 people, right? So Richland Park, we've got 70 plus vendors. East Nashville Farmers Market, we've got 60 plus. So I have to have multiple of those chat rooms, if that makes sense.
Right. So if you're trying to get the word out to all of your vendors about something coming up, you need to post that message to multiple groups, right? Or do you not often have something that you're telling everybody?
Well, that's correct. What you're saying. It's usually tailored to a specific group. What I'm asking or what I'm reminding. However, if I need to reach everyone, first of all, I do always send out a weekly newsletter as well, right? I do rely on that
to your farmers and vendors. Okay.
To my farmers and vendors, absolutely. So I do that. That to me, that's the real traditional way. But then if I want to reach everyone quickly, I tend to see that they just answer those. They read those Instagram messages faster. And if there's someone that I know is not on Instagram very much, you know what I do? I text them because I know I do. I text a lot. And I have farmers even who will text me because they don't pay attention to their Instagram, but they will text me every Thursday or every Friday to let me know what variety of apple he is bringing to the market. And it helps me out so much, you know, because he knows I want to know because I'm going to put it in our Instagram stories, you know, so that's basically kind of the gist of how I communicate with everyone.
I mean, that's kind of the key to life right now, right? Understand, if you're doing any kind of business, is understanding how each of your clients communicates. Because some people only want to get a phone call. Somebody will never pick up a phone. Somebody likes to text. Somebody likes to email. And I mean, I think that's what makes you a master of managing your clients or your farmers or your vendors is understanding which pool each of those folks falls into.
Yeah, don't call Kat on the phone.
You don't call me on the phone. Hate it.
She's not going to answer anyways, so you're just wasting everyone's time. But do you ever have any issues? That's okay. Do you have any issues with like boundaries with that? If they're texting you like on your personal cell phone, do they ever like text you on like off hours or like about other things that maybe should be handled in an email or something like that?
Or like after they've had a couple margaritas?
Yeah. Hey girl, what's up?
That is a fantastic question. So I want to say, first of all, I don't ever really feel like I'm off.
Well, also that. Yes. Okay. True. We can relate.
You know, however, if I am like calling it, I will let everyone know the Instagram groups. I'll say, hey, everyone, I am offline for the next 3 hours or I'm done for the day. You know, I'll pick our conversation up in the morning or people text me and I need to be off for that amount of time. I'm very comfortable with saying, hey, let me get back to you because I'm out of pocket. But to answer your question, really, I don't have a lot of people that take advantage of that. And, so that's I feel lucky in that way.
That's very good.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess my only other question would be, if you're dealing with a vendor, say for a rule violation warning or something like that, do you use email for that versus the Insta? I mean, so that you've got a record of it in case you get into any kind of situation later.
But honestly, I still have a record of it. If I remind everyone in an Instagram message, you still have a record of it. You just screenshot it. Got you know. However, I typically handle those through either text messages or on the phone or in person. Emails, the newsletter, and also the group chats on Instagram. I will warn everyone. Like everyone, you know, we got to make. I'm seeing a lot of vendors slacking, getting here at the last minute. Let's tighten that up. You know, those kinds of warnings.
Yeah, so it's mostly like, hey guys,
bring your tent weight.
Get together, or like, you know, get your stuff together. We're getting ready for another market. Like what so just those types of messages?
I don't know. Are in the group chats?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no. I have to say, I love this communicating with my vendors. I love it. And in the same fashion, you would think, oh, well, do they kind of abuse it? Does it kind of get crazy and out of control and off topic? It really doesn't. It does it just enough where people start kind of cracking jokes and it's great for camaraderie, but like no one really abuses it and like starts driving everyone crazy. But so that's great. So the kind of things, I actually made a list. So I'm going to have to think of what did I write on that list? Here are the kind of questions I will ask in a group chat. Everything that's lighthearted from, hey, y'all, what do y'all think we want to listen to? What should we listen to at the market tomorrow? What should I put on the playlist, on the Spotify playlist for tomorrow? From that all the way to, you know, hey, y'all, the roads are icy in, you know, an hour west. What are y'all seeing? And then all of my farmers will start communicating to each other saying, well, I'm in this county and it's looking good. Well, I'm in this county and it's not looking good. The roads are icy. Be careful.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it. And tons of, you know, reminders. It is windy as all heck, y'all. Bring those weights. Bring your heavy weights. Reminders like that. And even like roll call. Like if we have a large craft event or a large event where like a lot of my beverage makers are going to be, like Crafty Bastards or something in Nashville. I'll always send out reminders, roll call. Okay, if you're going to Crafty Bastards and you're not going to be at the market, let me know. And I don't know, I just get a really good response and quick responses, and I just love it.
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
and
great.
You can see if people have seen it, right?
Yeah, you can. You can see if people have seen it, because
That seems helpful.
It is very helpful. And even you can see when vendors read your email, it's easier for them to say, you know what? I didn't see it. Or I guess I opened it, but I couldn't read it, or I lost it. You know?
I cannot believe the number of vendors who will tell me, especially when I'm communicating about something relatively important. And I'll say, did you get the email? And they say, oh, yeah, I saw it. I didn't read it. Really? Do you think I've got nothing else to do? I just email you stuff that you're not going to read.
You're sending an email to say, hey, how are you? Like, people don't do that.
Chain mail.
Pop it open.
Chain letter.
But you know what? And also, I'm almost 100% positive, and we'll have to get someone to double check us, but I'm pretty sure everyone can see who read a message.
Yes, you can.
Chat. So if I say, everybody, if you don't bring you don't bring those weights, you're in big trouble today, or whatever. And do you have all of your vendors that know that you saw that message?
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a, I don't want to say peer pressure, but
like accountability.
Yeah. There's each other accountable. I really like that. And I think that's true. I think we do a lot of email communication, but I've heard our vendors be like, hey, you got the email, like, don't do that. Or say, hey, like, oh, remember they sent that email? Like, you need to make sure you have your tent weights and things like that. So it kind of helps them. They're all getting the same message. And that's helpful, I think, because then they can kind of help each other out, remind each other, or maybe they know the vendors that are kind of don't pay attention as much, and they can look out for them.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, absolutely. And they know that I'm a team of one. I have one assistant manager at Richland, but that's it. I haven't built up a big volunteer team yet or anything like some of the other markets in Nashville have. So I do need that help with my other vendors to be like, hey, you've got to move your car off the field. It's, 8:45. So it does help. The last thing I wanted to say is I know a lot of people have talked about like utilizing Slack. Mm-hmm. And I love Slack, but you know what? I already did a heavy lift getting all of my farmers on Instagram that I didn't want to have to go through another heavy lift of pushing them to Slack. Why would I do that? So I really just prefer this method a lot, and it's worked for us.
Yeah. Get them where they live.
A good system.
Right?
Yeah. It also seems like it might be a good way to like remind your vendors, like, hey, you should be posting on Instagram. Like, be on there, tag us, and kind of like involve them in that way if they're having to look there for like vendor notifications.
That's true.
Anyway.
They got to sign in anyway.
True.
Check things out. Maybe they'll take a minute to post something.
Yeah.
That is so true. I have had some vendors who are almost silent on Instagram come to me and say, hey, I hear there's a group chat. I don't think I've been added to that yet. And so that's helped them get used to getting into the app and using it. So you're totally right.
That's true.
Oh, wow.
Two birds.
Great. Multiple reasons.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. We really appreciate your experience, and thanks for chatting with us.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love chatting with y'all. I just love what y'all do. And I'm so happy I found your organization. Y'all are just great.
Thank you so much. We'll give you a little heads up when this is coming out, when this episode's going to air, and then you can pop it into your Instagram chat and tell your farmers and vendors to listen.
Yeah,
I totally will.
All right. Nice talking to you.
All right. Bye, Rebecca.
Bye.
That's so interesting, all the different ways that farmers market managers communicate with people. I've learned some things in this episode of our podcast.
Now I want to try everything.
I do. I want to try all the things.
Our farmers and vendors are going to be terrified. We're going to try all of these different ways to talk to you constantly.
Well, and that's one of the questions that you need to consider when you're looking at all these things is it worth confusing and frustrating your vendors by trying a new system?
Yeah.
Should you just try to improve the way you communicate using your current medium? I don't know if we cling to email because I'm a boomer and I'm old and email's comfortable for me. Maybe we should be talking to people via TikTok. I don't know.
Whoa.
Yeah. Gone too far.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of different modes to communicate. And I think just everyone in their personal life, it's like, okay, I have to check my Facebook messages and my Instagram. I mean, we're all doing that. And that's just kind of the world.
We're all hating it.
And we're all hating it. But also, I mean, I think that our farmers and vendors, they want to talk to us. Like, they want to hear from us. Like, that's important. I know that I want to hear from them. So I feel like that we're in this, like, kind of professional relationship where communication is really important. And especially if you're at, like, a like a bigger, super busier market, we don't have time to like catch up with everybody while we're at the market. Sometimes it's
like interrupting sales.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes at the weekday markets, I have a little more time to like talk stuff out, but just the same thing, like during the week, like they're busy prepping, we're busy with other markets. And so to have that kind of touch point of communication is really important to both sides of this.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I do know that people at really much smaller markets are probably wondering about, why don't you just talk to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you sending out mass messages?
But then they come to our market and they see like, oh, wow, okay.
And actually, unless you're by small market, unless we're talking like 20 or less, I think this is important. This is stuff you're going to have to deal with because you don't really have time in a 3-hour market to have a serious conversation with 12 people.
And in smaller markets, I mean, if you want to just be clear, like the clarity of communication, just so everyone's getting the same message, because stuff gets lost verbally. When you're having a chit-chat conversation, it's like sometimes those points aren't really being like absorbed as much as they would be if you just wrote it out and it was really clear.
Yeah.
One last thing to kind of consider too is like accessibility for communication. Understanding that farmers and vendors might speak different languages.
Yeah.
They might not have internet service or a way to communicate digitally. They might have different staff there that needs a different form of communication. So knowing, not just assuming things about your farmers and vendors, but knowing how they can communicate and making sure that those messages are received by them in the best possible way, just keeping that in mind.
That's hugely important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that we deal with a lot of farmers markets actually that don't have good internet access. You know, that maybe they do at the market, maybe they don't, but oftentimes they don't on the farms in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really specific to your market, but hopefully now you have lots of ideas. And we talk about this all the time, but we operate a year-round market. So our communication style is probably different than people operating seasonal markets that, you know, they probably have short bursts of lots of communication during the season. And then there's probably longer periods of time where they don't talk to their vendors as much. But if you are going to switch communication modes, maybe between seasons is a time that you can think about that. And that way, when you're onboarding vendors for your new market season in the spring, you've got it all figured out. You know, you don't want to switch right now in the middle of the busiest time of year.
Yeah, so kind of plan ahead on that. And actually, that's another like quick point is if you do have a seasonal market, if you've set up this way to communicate with your farmers and vendors, maybe send them a couple quick notes during the off season to say, hey, everyone, just, you know, checking in, thinking about you, looking forward to a great season in the spring, you know, hope everything's going well, shoveling that snow on the farm or whatever's happening in the off season, because we have heard a lot in our Facebook group about like, how do you get your farmers and vendors to come back every season, and like reminding them and getting in touch with them again has been difficult. So I think having a way to communicate with them and then popping them a couple like quick messages during the off season could be really helpful for them.
Up your retention.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, we learned so much today.
Yeah.
Keep talking out there.
Yes, we did.
Thanks for listening today. And big thanks to Vendor 101 for supporting new farmers and vendors, saving market managers time, and making the application process thorough so vendors and farmers markets thrive. And for their support of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market Podcast. Find more information by clicking the Vendor 101 logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community, and follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros. Find online education and other resources at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is hosted by Kat Fields White and Bridget Myers and produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.